With the deadline 10 days away, a domino falls, and still awaiting who will prove to be formidable come playoff time, we take an in depth look at the power rankings. All of that and more ahead on the Junior B spot on CROW LAX TV.
Welcome back to the Junior Beast podcast. My name is Keenan, as always, and it is always my pleasure to say it every week, joined by my co-host Muhammad. How are you doing this week? It was I don't know, like, we're coming into the dying weeks of the season, and it feels like time is just freaking flying by at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't seem all that long ago that we were waiting for the season to start, and games were a little later to arrive this year. Usually, you sort of get a few games flying in on that last weekend of April, but or last week of April. This year, they didn't really start until May 3rd or 4th, and a lot of teams didn't start till the 9th or 10th. So it took a little longer this year, and all of a sudden now here we are, almost 2 months into the season, so or a month and a half. So it's going by fast, but I can't complain. The Oilers lost, and I just watched the brutal Senior C lacrosse game, so I'm happy.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned the Oilers, actually, and I think it's fitting, and I need to mention this to kind of kick off this podcast. As I saw a stat today, and I'm not I'm not 100% sure. I didn't do all my research. I know, bad podcast host of me not doing that. But I read that the Buffalo Bandits had higher local TV ratings for the finals of the NLL than the Florida Panthers had for the Stanley Cup Finals. Which,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if that's true, that's absolutely crazy when you consider the type of coverage that each league gets,
yeah,
and
hey,
then
that's
you
true.
and then you extrapolate that into each market and think about how many eyeballs are fed constantly the NHL product, and how little the NLL is out there. To think that that's even possible is pretty wild.
Absolutely.
They are crazy about lacrosse in that area, though. Like, the bandit following is real. There's
Yeah.
a lot of reserves in that area, and a lot of lacrosse culture, if you wanna put it that way, in those regions. But
I mean, the
yeah,
Bandits attendance practically rivals that of the Sabres. It is definitely lacrosse country in Buffalo. Like, that is one
yeah,
place as a Canadian I will say that lacrosse fever is high.
yeah. The Eastern Seaboard is known for field lacrosse, but yeah, like just across the border there, St. Catharines isn't all that far, a lacrosse hotbed from Buffalo. So yeah, no, there is a big following for lacrosse in Buffalo, and so as much as I say I am surprised, um, just given the two leagues and what we're talking about here, if it is going to happen anywhere, it would be Buffalo in terms of the NLL.
Absolutely.
All right, Keenan. So first order of business here is to talk about Chase Misek, who drops down from the Junior A Mountaineers after he was released, and he will be donning a Calgary Shamrock jersey. And that's a big addition for the Shamrocks. I think they were in need of some help in net, and he's going to provide that. He's a big frame, not unlike their goaltender of the past few seasons in Josh Pilsner. Um, but I think he is their solution to a number one goaltender. I think that especially in a Founders year where they're going to be in games that they're punching up a little bit in class at times. I think they needed a guy like this, and I think he's got the capability of stepping up for them. Time will tell. I want to see him play a couple of games at that level first before I kind of make my final decision on how much of an upgrade it is. But I do think this is a nice addition for the Shamrocks.
Yeah, and I didn't know a whole lot about this kid before before you had mentioned to me about the Shamrocks getting him after that drop down from Junior A. So, everything that I've kind of heard from you has been good, and I mean, like, I've done a little bit of early digging, and I mean, it seems like it's going to be a big pickup for the Shamrocks, and like you said, going into a Founders year, that's going to be big for them and spark something heading into these dying weeks of the season.
Yeah, so big pickup for the Shamrocks, and we'll see to what degree that ends up playing out to be in terms of the increase of quality in their net. Now let's get to some of these game recaps. Friday night, the Rebels would take on the Warriors. Rebels 13, Warriors 4. And Keenan, I literally have no comment on this game other than the fact that it was played and the fact that Ethan Jolivet continues to impress me. He was real good in this game again. He's a guy that stands out pretty much every game I see that team play. But this is just a not a good lacrosse game, and I think we just need to move on.
You know what? I concur. I won't. I have nothing else to add. So
Yeah, no, there's just bigger and better things to talk about. So let's move on to another Friday night tilt. The Chill on the Silvertip. The Chill would win in a high scoring contest here, 17-11. Important win for the Chill. They shake some of their past ghosts against the Silvertips, the team that they've really struggled with over the past 5 or so seasons. They had already lost a couple to them. They get a big win here. Cameron Wallace, 6 goals, 2 assists. Cash Bannister, 1 goal, 5 assists. And for the Silvertips, Graydon Clark with 3 goals. As you can tell, Cameron Wallace and Cash Bannister would kick off what was a huge weekend offensively for the Chill. More on that later. And this win allowed the Chill to put some heat on the Mavericks for first place. And there's going to be some key central showdowns here down the stretch to determine who ends up getting that bye, which could prove to be huge in the playoffs.
yeah, I caught pieces of this game on CROW this past weekend. All that I can really say about this game is what an absolute slugfest it was between the two of them. Like, the first and the second periods, I mean, 5-4 in favor of the Chill through one. In the second period, 14 goals combined, 9 for the Chill, 5 for the Tips. Like, just crazy amounts of offense. And I don't think that's, like, anything against the goaltending in the game. Just, it was a game of heavy hitters.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see any of this game, but I'd imagine that there's a lot of high quality opportunities. The Silvertips generally like to run, and I saw some clips of them getting out in transition over the past few games, and that's part of their identity. So it doesn't surprise me that this game was high scoring with how crisp and fluid the Chill offense can be. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really mental, like a big mental victory for the Chill here to get this win. And as we talked about before, you can get hung up on certain opponents and have a really hard time dealing with whatever, matchup stylistically, whatever it is, playing that team. So I think it's key for them to get this win and keep pace up near the Mavericks for top spot.
Yeah, and I know we'll touch on the standings a little bit later because there's some interesting things shaking out in these dying weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the third and final game on Friday night was an upset, and is a tough loss for the Mountaineers. The site says they won this game 5-2, but I'm almost certain that's faulty because their Instagram account was providing live updates. It was 5-2 Mountaineers after the first, but as their account would say, they lost this game 8-7, and that was your final score. So I believe that's an error on the site right now. If anybody goes and checks that out, I'm 99.9% sure that the SWAT did win this game 8-7.
They do
And
actively have it listed as box and not final on the website
yeah,
as we record right now, so I definitely think there's an issue there.
yeah. So I do believe that the Saskatchewan SWAT took this game 8-7, and this is 2 years in a row, Keenan, that the Mountaineers have dropped a game at home to the retooling SWAT. Um, just we talk about this all the time. Certain teams having trouble. I guess the Mountaineers have trouble with the SWAT. What else is there to say? I don't know. I don't really have an explanation for why. I don't see either of those teams enough to tell you. Yeah, apparently they have an issue dealing with the SWAT. really disappointing loss for a team that I thought was getting it together. Big week for them coming up. They got 3 games, 3 home games on deck over the course of the next week. So plenty of time for them to find themselves again. But that was a bit of a rough one for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, and I think that introduces some interesting scenarios into the South because, like, we're at the point now where I feel very comfortable starting to talk about playoff scenarios as we get deep here. It's interesting. The Mounties have actually played the least amount of games of any team in the South Division, so they're still technically hot on the heels of the Marauders, who are only 2 points up on the Mounties, but the Mounties do have 2 games in hand. But it makes you wonder because I believe the Mounties and the Marauders do play each other one more time this year. They do on July 4th. So this it could introduce an interesting scenario if, let's say, the Marauders beat the Mounties here. It could be the Mounties, punch an error that maybe they didn't win that game to get the home floor advantage, depending on how the rest of the season shakes out for each of the clubs.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering that it means going to Okotoks for an extra game.
Yeah.
Okotoks traditionally does play better at home, so it's a bit of a drive and everything. So yeah, I mean, it could be. I think that's a motivating factor for them. I'm not in their room. I don't know how they feel about that, but yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how that develops because generally, when you lose games like that, um, it's makes it that much harder to gain ground and sort of finish where you want in the standings. But we'll see. Plenty of time left. I believe 7 or 8 games for most teams. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Now let's move to Saturday, where the Rebels would take down the Mavericks 9-4. And I turned this game on, and it was like I was in the arena, and I'm looking at my phone, and I turn it on CROW LAX, and I'm like, what the heck is this? It was like 6-0, 15 minutes in or 10 minutes in or whatever, and then I hear like soon after the Rebels had 6 goals on their first 11 shots, and I'm just going like, what? Right then I was like, okay, this is a goof troop game. Two teams that play similar styles, feed off mistakes, and plenty of broken plays. I'd imagine there's probably some of that in this game, but I know both teams sat some key players. Anytime, I wouldn't take too much from this game, just in the sense that anytime you have a bunch of goals like that scored on so few shots, it's almost like a toss away. Like, yeah, okay, this is a 1 in 100 type game, and like kind of rinse and forget if you're on the bad, especially if you're on the bad end of that. But nonetheless, I mean, the Rebels, again, they win at home. Jackson Baker, 3 goals, 1 assist. Rylan Connors, 2 goals, 4 assists. And Grayson Admonson, 3 goals for the Mavericks. I don't know, like, I don't care, like, who you are. Like, when you start a game like that, 6-on-11, doesn't matter who you are or how good your team might be. You're losing that game pretty much every time. And so that just there's really nothing else to say there. Just a tough start there for the Mavericks, and just too much to overcome, especially on the road and especially against a quality opponent like the Rebels.
Yeah, I was the one calling this game for on CROW this past weekend, and so I got the pleasure of watching this whole thing. Obviously, I think I was a bit surprised actually by this game. I mean, the Rebels go up, what is it, 7-0 after the first, and then score early in the second to make it 8-0, and you're thinking, okay, well, this game is as good as done. And I mean, based on the box score, yeah, the game was basically done in the first 21 minutes of this one. I think I expected a bit more from the Mavericks in that game. Sure, you're sitting some key guys on both sides, but I mean, even then, like, I really don't know how to describe it. Like, it's just interesting how the Mavericks have looked so strong, even with, maybe some games they have sat some big guys. I mean, I wouldn't know unless I'm going through score by score. But I expected the Mavericks to at least make a bit of a more of a fight in the second, especially like we know that the Mavericks are super strong in transition and so strong off the offensive short change. that it caught me off guard. That's probably the best way I can describe this game. Is this game caught me off guard?
Yeah, no, I mean, just looking at the score just looks kind of strange, but I will say, like in a season of 20 games, even though it's not that long of a season, you're bound to have like a couple flat type spots, and I wasn't in the arena, so it's perfectly possible that that's what this was. I don't know for sure because I wasn't there, but that's it's totally within the realm of possibility that that's what went on here. But obviously the Rebels were ready to play here, and they took advantage of maybe a team that kind of got off the bus and was a little weary. I don't know, but it doesn't matter how well you play though. At the end of the day, if 6 on 11 go in, it's curtains. So
Yeah.
that's really all the analysis that you need there.
And I will just add, like, if you're the Mavericks, I'm not worried as the Mavericks. I mean, sure, you had one bad showing, big whoop. You still are up by a single point on the Silvertips with 2 games in hand and 8 games left on the season to play. I mean, like, I'm not too worried if I'm the Mavericks.
Yeah, standings wise, maybe not, but big picture, I think there is something there you got to be concerned about, and
Oh,
I'll get to that.
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'll get to that in a second here. But first, let's go over to another Saturday game, and I'll be real quick with this one. Chill 22, SWAT 3, an absolute obliteration. Chill didn't play around. Huge point night for the big guys, and yeah, this was a team that uh, didn't waste any time. They got up on the SWAT right away, and especially after seeing the SWAT take down the Mountaineers the night before, maybe that was a bit of a wake up call too for the Chill to be ready for this one, and they obviously were. Complete beatdown.
Yeah, not a whole lot from me to add on this one besides just, chill domination.
Yeah, and if you're the SWAT, you got to be like, I'm glad in the sense that they won that game the Friday night, because going all that way to get your ass kicked twice, is never good for anyone.
No.
So just in terms of team morale, I guess it's a good thing that they did get that upset win on Friday night, because that's a tough one on Saturday afternoon inside Brentwood Arena.
And I
All right.
think we can touch on this later too. Is like, I don't know if we maybe even want to touch on it now. Is what does this do for the Chill? Because after 2 big wins on the weekend, and they didn't play, I don't think, any more games. I don't think they had a game on Sunday. Um, 2 big wins on the weekend now puts them 1 point back of the Silvertips for second with a game in hand on the Tips. What does that do for the Chill at this point, knowing that home floor advantage is literally within your grasp after what I think you and I both would consider a bit of a disappointing season for the Chill last year.
Yeah. I mean, they're not leaving as late for sure. Like last year, they had to win like 4 of their last 6, I think, to get in. Um, and it was looking for a little while, midway through the season, that they were going to be the odd team out, and it took a bit of a Red Deer crash, and them to get hot down the stretch to get in. But this year, they've figured it out quicker, and their offense is really going right now. I mean, clearly, I think they want home floor advantage. I think almost every team would. You're seeing a lot of home victories this year, not a lot of teams going on the road and upsetting anyway. So I think it is important. I think for them, the bigger thing is trying to finish first, so they don't have to go into that barn in Innisfail.
Oh
And
yeah,
it like truly is a barn, more than once. So I think that's the big thing. Whether or not they finish ahead of the Silvertips, I don't know if that's as important. But I think first is a big thing in that division. So we'll see if they're able to do that. To me, that's the race. I think the Mavericks and Chill are going to end up going at it here for the 1 seed, and we'll see if the Chill have enough to overtake them, because I think they're 3 points behind them with a game in hand, maybe. I
they
haven't looked.
are they're 1 point back of the Silvertips with a game in hand. 2 points back of the Mavericks, but the Mavs have a game in hand on them.
Okay. All right. So yeah, they're gonna have to probably, like, they dropped some games they shouldn't have earlier in the year, like on paper anyway. So
And
they're gonna have to make up for that.
there's some big interdivisional matchups coming up for that too. I mean, we can probably get into it more in the coming weeks on the Junior Beast. But there's two big matchups there for the Chill because they play the Tips one more time, and then the closing game of the season is actually the Chill and the Mavericks. So that could be a interesting game to say the least.
Yeah, and that's in Brentwood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they've already played twice yet in Innisfail. I figured it had to be. Yeah, so yeah, if they win that game, then all of a sudden the math makes it's a lot more possible that they
Yeah.
that they are able to pull off that climb in the standing. So yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to probably win like four in a row here to put themselves in good position because I think the Mavericks are just they're consistent enough where you're gonna have to go on some type of run to overtake them. So
Yeah.
we'll see, but I think that's an interesting development there in the Central. And speaking of the Central, the Silvertips would play Red Deer on Saturday as well. And the Silvertips would take an early 6-0 lead to the room after the first. They didn't play around here. Red Deer goes to Rocky View in this game with 14 runners, four of them being affiliates. So very short staffed, and the Silvertips definitely took advantage. Much higher scoring game than these two traditionally play. These guys often play like 8-4, 7-6, 6-4 type games.
A lot of single digits.
Um, and that was back when McDonough and Wells were in net and everything. But still, like there's that history of playing lower scoring games. Zachary Cullen, 2 goals, 5 assists for the Silvertips. And who else for Red Deer? Riley Dowswell, 4 goals, 1 assist in the losing cause. Silvertips trying to try to keep pace with the two big dogs in the division, the Mavericks and the Chill. They do so with a 7-goal win at home. What you got here?
Yeah, I don't know how much again I have to add on this one, just with how short the Rampage bench was. It feels almost like it was kind of inevitable when you see, you got 14 runners and four of them being those APs. One thing I do want to note, though, and interesting in that game, both goaltenders got some apples on the board, too, as Heisler gets an apple for the Rampage, and Jacob Orr got a couple of them for the Tip. So just an interesting little development that you see there.
Keenan, you ever watch Breaking Bad?
It's been a while since I've watched it, but yeah, I should really watch that again.
Yeah, so I mean, every time I hear the name Heisler, I think of Heisenberg. Like every time, I called a couple of their games. I just wanted to call the guy Heisenberg because every time I hear that name, that's all I think of.
How much do
But
you want to bet that's his nickname in the room, too?
yeah, well, if it is, that's awesome. Kudos to those guys for coming up with that. But yeah, all right, let's move on here. The Outlaws would go to Winnipeg this weekend to play a trio of games, and we'll do all those together here. First one, the Blizzard would take 12-6, and the Outlaws actually led going into the third, which is pretty impressive considering that long-ass bus trip that you got to take out there.
Yeah.
And obviously those guys are not used to that. Blizzard would run off a 7-0 final frame, though, to take this one 12-6. Woods, Angus, and Fielding all with hat tricks. And we've seen several of these games this year where multiple players just go off in the same game for the same team and score in bunches. That was of note. It would appear the Outlaws ran out of gas on the first game of the trip. And that also would happen in the second game where the Blizzard would win 11-7. Again, the Outlaws led going into the third. Blizzard run off a 6-0 final frame this time to win by 4. Evan Fielding with another big game, 4 goals, 1 assist, and Carter Grace does it again for the Outlaws, 4 goals, 1 assist as well. Third periods, Keenen have absolutely killed the Outlaws this year, like absolutely hammered them. I don't. Part of that is, I mean, they are a bit of a younger team. I would have to think youth is part of that, but still, like, it's a lot of your own doing and a lot of just not being prepped properly, almost like not having, I don't know if it's the right mindset or just not being I don't know how to put it. I just think it's you're not man, I don't even know how to put it. Like you're not playing with the type of urgency is probably the best word that you need to have in those situations. And this is a team that hasn't won a whole lot in the last number of years, and so it takes a while to learn that. But yeah, you got to finish games, and they've just been done in by these late game finishes and big comebacks by the opponent.
Yeah, it it's kind of unfortunate to see. I mean, the Outlaws the Outlaws play a strong 40 minutes of lacrosse. If we're being honest with ourselves, the Outlaws play a strong 40 minutes. The only problem is that they only play strong for those 40 minutes. It's very much like I don't know, is it running out of gas? Is it like
It
getting
could be like it
comfortable
could
with where
be.
they are? Like,
I've said it before. I'll say it again. They have some very good coaches on that bench. Like
yeah,
I don't understand what it is. I really don't. Um, I don't think their conditioning is that much worse than anybody else's. I don't think that it's just sort of breakdowns. It's defensive breakdowns and not getting off the floor and letting the other team go down, grab the ball and just run in a clear path to their net, leaving guys in behind them on the fast break. Like it's like stuff that's not that hard to correct, but it just doesn't seem to. Now, granted, I didn't see what happened in these Winnipeg games, but I mean, I saw the Maverick game. I saw them play with the Rebels for 40 minutes and fall apart. I saw there was a Red Deer game where they kind of let go of the rope a little bit, and there was another game. Oh, the Crude game a couple Friday nights ago where they were up by 5 goals with like 7 minutes left, 4 or 5 goals, 7 minutes left, and lost in overtime. Just demoralizing, gut wrenching losses, and it's tough because I think again they've done a lot with their talent, with what they have talent wise. So it's tough to see them let go of the rope a little bit in these games.
absolutely.
All right, and then their final game of the weekend, they would get a result here, and they did look like they played a much better third in this game. They would get an 8-8 draw. Blizzard tie the game with just over 2 minutes to go, so they were that close to another victory. True to form, the Outlaws fought and were in the game all the way through. Carter Gray's huge weekend with another 4 goals. Will Angus would get 2 for the Blizzard. And again, the Outlaws do get that point before leaving. That might have made that long bus trip back a little bit better. And they come out of the weekend 0-2-1 with their season or with their series with the Blizzard. Anything else there, Keenan, or are we good with Outlaws Blizzard?
I don't think I have anything else for Outlaws Blizzard. Just besides the fact that you know the Outlaws are good on paper, um, and we've seen so many glimpses of them all season playing as well as that paper suggests. Just it's 2/3 of a game that they keep playing, and that's what's
Yeah.
killing them.
Yeah, see, Keenan, you're the known Outlaws lover. There you go. There you go again.
Hey, hey, hey! Don't be
I,
don't be tacking that on me.
I hear that all the time. I don't know why. Yeah. Apparently you're the Outlaws lover, so.
Hey, look, I'm just saying the Outlaws have the talent there. They just need to sort some things. That's all I'm saying.
All right. The Marauders go into Red Deer also on Sunday and come out with a 10-9 win rampage. A little short again here. Tight one in the draw between two relatively evenly matched teams. Special teams in this one comes up big for the Marauders. 3 power play goals, 1 shorthanded. So 4 total on special teams while only giving up 1 power play goal the other way. Lyric Kluch, and might as well call this kid Lyric Clutch. 3 goals. Ben Erickson, 2 goals, 1 assist for the Marauders as well. And then again, who else? Riley Dowswell, 5 goals, 2 assists for Red Deer. Just doing pretty much everything on the score sheet for them. And devastating pair of losses for Red Deer in the playoff race. Now 6 points out with only 7 games to go. To put that into perspective, really, they're going to have to probably go something like 5-2 down the stretch, and then would need the Silver Tips to go 1-5. Like, probably not realistic. Chances that probably next to nothing. We'll get to that a little bit more in depth in the next segment, but tough weekend for Red Deer.
Yeah, I think, um, and I don't say this lightly. I do think this past weekend was the nail in the coffin for Red Deer and the playoffs. Um, if you're 6 points out with 7 to go, against teams that are, the Chill and the Mavs play again against each other, the Chill and the Silvertips play again, and I don't know if the Rampage actually play any of them again for the rest of the season. So, I'm just double checking here. Oh, wow, I am very incorrect. Sorry. The Rampage almost exclusively play all of them. Um, so, it's tough, right? Because the Rampage, I mean, their next game is this Saturday against the Blizz. They lose that game. Now you got 6 points. You're crawling with 6 games. But then listen to their last 6 games. Away against the Mavericks, away against the Mounties, away against the Mavericks again, home to the Silvertips, away to the Chill, and home to the SWAT. I mean,
Yeah, it's tough.
how do
It's
you
tough.
come out of that, like you said, 5-2? How do you come out of all those games 5-2? So it's an unfortunate scenario for the Rampage because I don't quite see a way that they find that luck. So, and like you said, we'll cover it in the next segment a little bit about something with the Rampage. So, yeah, it just sucks for Red Deer, right? I mean, they've played really good lacrosse over the last few years, and now in a bit of a down year where, everybody around them seems to be finding ways to win when, the Rampage just aren't quite finding the ways to win. Tight games, yes, but not able to close out, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean anybody who's played this sport at a high level will tell you and understand you need 25-man roster and you need everybody contributing and being a quality player. And yeah, I just think it's especially in that division, it's too much to ask for them to win games with 14 runners and 4 affiliates and things like that. So um yeah, there's good pieces there, but just not enough depth, not enough numbers there. So we'll see if they can go on some miraculous run. They did go on a really big downturn last year, which caused them to miss the playoffs. Maybe they can make up for it with a miraculous run here down the stretch. I don't know, but we'll get to that in a second here. First, we got to talk about Maverick Shamrocks, and this probably was the game of the week. The Mavericks, how many OT games is this team going to play? Like really,
Yeah.
two teams with contrasting styles. I said the Mavericks and Rebels have a lot of similarities. Well, the Mavericks and Shamrocks are very different types of teams. The Mavericks, very aggressive, in your face, want to play chaotic lacrosse, whereas the Shamrocks, very poised, very efficient, and a team that wants to play patient lacrosse. So some contrasting styles going up against one another usually makes for a pretty interesting game. And let's look. This game looked wild. Hayden Sutherland scores shorthanded to go ahead 10-9 with 43 seconds on the clock. And then Tyler OJ scores to tie it up with 1 second on the clock on the power play. They would head to overtime where Jace Delinsky would deliver in overtime for the Mavericks. They get the 11-10 win. Huge game statistically for Delinsky and Sutherland on the Mavericks, and on the other side, OJ with a big 6 point game. Unfortunately, his tying goal wasn't enough. And in a place that's proved to be very difficult to win, the Shamrocks got real close, just couldn't pull it out in the end.
Yeah, and that's it's always a big day when you beat the Shamrocks. And I still think that I was very much, I don't know who, like, what smoke I was blowing at the start of the season about the Shamrocks, because man, have they really proved me wrong there. So, it's always a big game when, you're defeating the Shamrocks by any way, shape, or form. Um, I am going to give my flowers to OJ, though. He, with a power play goal with 1 second left on the clock, I mean, talk about playing to the end. Like, playing right till that final buzzer goes. to even send this one to OT for the Shamrocks to have that chance. Like that's a big game for him.
Yeah, two heavyweights going at it. I know the Shamrocks lost the game, but I think I came away from that game, especially when you consider the Mavericks were off a brutal loss. Like you knew you were going to get their best at home, and the Shamrocks, played them right to the end. I came away thinking, all right, okay, the Shamrocks have started to figure some things out a little bit here. They had some big time wins against some lesser thans, and now they had a test, and I know they didn't win the game, but that's like when the game goes to overtime, it's a coin flip at that point, and so the Mavericks get the big win, and the Shamrocks show that they are indeed a true contender in that showdown that took place in Innisfail on Sunday. Now, last game recap: Crew 12, Warriors 7. Keenan, this game was 5-3 Warriors halfway through the second. And then eventually a poor PK and some bad penalties really cost the Warriors. And even maybe more so than that, some poor reverse transition. Liam Elliott alone had 3 breakaways in the second period where he pretty much walked out the front gate. And there was nobody within like 20 yards of him. The Warriors back the other way had a lot of odd man breaks where they would pull the ball out, and I'm talking like 4-on-2s and botch passes on those opportunities, and just a lot of things going by the wayside in terms of unforced errors by the Warriors. The Crew would score 5 power play goals, most of those coming in the third, and some strong contributions from their depth guys. Avery Stenson had a big game, among others. And then, of course, the big guns, Liam Elliott, 2 goals, 3 assists, stepped up in this one, had a lot of chances. I just talked about the breakaways he had. Crew take the season series 2-1. You would expect them to win this game. It was a lot tougher than I would want to see if I'm them, but they do get the win, and they move on and move forward with a big weekend coming up.
Yeah, that's it. I don't want to say it's like a expected win, but I mean, like I think I've said it on the last couple podcasts and all that is we all know that the Warriors are essentially rebuilding right now. After losing, I don't even know how many guys it was, 7, 8 guys that they lost in the off season.
Like 15.
Yeah, like how do you feel the competitive team just like that? I mean you can, and it depends on your pipeline, but still, nonetheless, that's gonna be tough on anybody. So, um, yeah, I think I was also a bit surprised to see the box score this close in the end. Um, but kudos to the Crew for coming out and taking that victory in the end. So,
Yeah, all right. So that does it for game recaps of for the week. So now I want to move on to something here and talk about what I think is the linchpin of the deadline here, and that's really the Red Deer Rampage. If you look around the league, there's not a whole bunch of sellers either in terms of what they have to offer and what teams want. That would legitimately make them better. And also a team that has no chance of making the playoffs. That's in a situation that is in a position to sell at all. So Red Deer is that team, and it's going to be. I'm really curious to see if teams prioritize picks or money in return. Because if it's picks, then obviously a team like the Mavericks would have a big advantage because they are in the same draft as the Rampage, and they're the only team that has the currency to make that type of trade. Now, if it's money, then maybe some other teams might have an advantage, although the Mavericks have a bunch of money as well. So um, it's going to be up to, I think a lot of it, though, is going to come down to where these guys want to go if Red Deer does decide to deal them. I've talked to a couple of guys that are directly involved, and they've said that they think that they're going to have a major say if and when they go. So when the player has that much say, it changes a lot. And then, you're not going to see a guy just get dealt out of nowhere to some team and not know if he's going to even report. And then obviously if that team doesn't do their research and they make a trade for a guy that's not going to show up, then that's bad. That's on them, because then they're giving up assets for nothing. So I am really curious to see how that plays out. There's obviously a major piece here, and that's Dowswell. Um, there's a few teams I think that he's willing to go to, whether it happens or not. I know he wants to stay in Red Deer for now and try to help them get, back in the race. But we just went over it. Like, mathematically, it's very unlikely. So it's got to happen within the next 10 days or so, maybe even less. I don't even know if the deadline is July 1st or if it's a few days earlier than that. But yeah, the clock is ticking, and there are some big time pieces. Antonishin would be a nice add for a team as well. There's a couple other guys there, so we'll see. But it all centers around Red Deer, Keenen, and what they do with their players and where they end up going.
Yeah, and just I'm thinking about this from a perspective of, the last couple seasons, just because, we've seen in the North, like, to compare this to the North, in recent seasons, we've seen the CROW on the outside looking in. Then they'll end up sending, like we've seen, why can I not remember Fodchuk's last name there for a second? But we'll see them send Fodchuk to a team for the remainder of the season.
Wait a second, Keenen. You said you can't remember Fodchuk's last name? That is his last name.
Yeah, no, I know it. I was honestly, I don't know what my brain was doing there. I'll be real with you.
Okay. I was like, I was like, man, can you not remember his first name? I was gonna say it's Josh, but then I was like, can't remember his last name. You just said it. Okay.
My brain was not working for a sec.
Right.
So yeah, like, we've seen Fodchuk get dealt to another team in exchange for, like, a mid kind of pick, with his rights reverting at the end of the season. Do you think we see guys like a Dowswell, like an Antonishin, like I don't know, like a Heisler, even, to a team that needs a goaltender? Do you think we see teams getting these guys for the remainder of the season and then the rights reverting, similar to the Fodchuk scenario that the CROW have done in recent seasons?
See, these guys are fifth years, or at least I know Dowswell and Antonishin are. So I know Dowswell is for sure, and I'm pretty sure Antonishin is. So the reversion of rights wouldn't even be a thing because they're graduating out into senior.
Oh yeah,
So
no,
it
you're
wouldn't
right.
even,
Wow.
yeah. So it wouldn't even matter. Like that wouldn't work. There's no rental involved. It would just be, you'd have them for the rest of the year, and that would be it.
I
Which
believe
obviously,
I believe
go ahead.
Antonishin actually does have a couple extra years. He's 19 right now, so.
Oh, really? Okay. He's younger than I thought then. He's played a couple of senior games. I thought he was graduating. All right. So, I mean, so maybe there's something there. Maybe his rights would revert back and they can work something out that way. But
Do you
yeah,
realistically see it happening?
um, maybe maybe if it's to the Mavericks, just because they could send them a fourth, like a third or something, or a fourth round pick, because there's not other teams that can give them a pick.
Yeah.
So I could see that. Whether he wants to go there or not is a different story. I don't know if he does, but because like I said, these guys are gonna, I think, dictate where they go for the most part. So it's got to kind of be it's got to be a marriage between what the team can get and what can help them improve, and also what the player wants. So we'll see how it plays out. The other part of it is that the North, there's not much trading left to do in the North. Like, all the North movement was been done already for the most part. I mean, the CROW tried to improve their roster with 3 or 4 trades already. You saw the Warriors go and send Connors over to the Rebels. There's not a whole lot of players to begin with that you would really consider in trades in the North. And a lot of those guys that have already been dealt. Wells and has been moved to the Outlaws. So yeah, there really isn't a whole lot of traffic to be taken care of in the North. The South, I expect the Shamrocks to try to add. Whether or not they're able to, I don't know. I mean, it's a big thing being able to say, hey, we're in the Founders. So I think maybe for them it'd be more out of province. We'll see, but yeah, I think it all centers again around Red Deer. All right, so let's go over to naming our beast of the week, and this one was a little tougher this week because there's a lot of guys that had big time efforts. Of course, you could go Dow as well. He had 5 goals in one game, four in another, but he's already won once this year. And the same can be said for Grace, who had a couple of big time outputs in Winnipeg. But I also believe that I gave him one last year. And Tyler Ogier comes up, as I said, on he goes off against the Mavericks. I said I've got to go with the two kids from the Chill. Cash Bannister, a combined 6 goals and 12 assists in 2 games this past week. And Cam Wallace, 13 goals and 2 assists in 2 games. Just an insane weekend for the Chill. They go like this award goes to the Chill offense. 39 goals in 2 games. What are we even talking about here? But I'll name those two guys, Cash Bannister and Cam Wallace. I don't believe have received this award before, and these are two guys that have been close in the past, so they get their flowers here. Just insane for the second straight week. We have Beast of the Week co-winners, Cam Wallace and Cash Bannister.
Yeah, impressive work by both of them this weekend. Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add. I mean, you throw up as an offense, you throw up 39 goals in 2 games. I mean, what? Like you said, what are we even talking about here? Like,
Yeah, you have to give
unbelievable,
it to
man.
them. Have to give it to them. It had to be somebody on the Chill, and turns out it's two guys getting the honor. But obviously that offense is clicking, and for guys to put up numbers like that, the whole offense has to be playing well. So
Yeah.
good signs, and looks like it's clicking there for the Chill. We'll see. How that offense and how that team plays down the stretch here as they look to try to finish first in the Central. Now, another thing here as I pull it up is I had this sent to me, Keenan, by somebody who doesn't want to be named. I wanted to give him credit, but because this is pretty damn cool. Um, they sent me a something that you would call, is it ELO or is it ELO? Does it
So
matter what?
I'll explain this a little bit because I was confused by this, and I'm not sure how many of the listeners to the pod maybe know what this is. So essentially, what it's called is the ELO rating system or ELO ranking system. Um, so it has an interesting history. It's actually started by a dude whose last name was Elo. It was made to calculate relative skill levels of players in chess, but since then it's kind of moved over to a lot more of like esports kind of stuff and other sporting kind of things. And it's evident by the gracious person who sent us this we're calling the Elo power rankings. It was gracious of them to have put this together and sent this over to us. And essentially all that this is every team starts at the same number as their Elo ranking or their rating, essentially. And based on, scores, ties, divisional matchups, stuff like that, the teams will lose or gain a certain amount of Elo per game. So, it. And again, it varies. Like, without naming specific names, like, just looking down the list, like, there's some games that are, like, very tight interdivision games or crossover games between like the North and the South where the score is only by one, so a team gains it and the other team loses like 10.4 points kind of thing, or games where it's like an absolute blowout within the division, where it's like a 15 goal differential and you see one team is gaining and the other team is losing 122 points. So essentially all that this does is it takes an average of the strength of play, how the teams ended up ending, takes away that amount of points that it arbitrarily gives and calculates from the losing team and adds that number to the winning team. And it creates this really interesting kind of ranking system of how teams are playing against one another, and it really is one of the most accurate ranking systems that is out there as it sits.
So Keenan, would basically everybody would start at like a number like 100, and then you would go up or down from there? Is that essentially how it works? Or say 1,000,
So
you'd start at 1,000, and then you go up or down based on that?
traditionally, a team will start, a team person, whatever. I'm using team because we're in lacrosse. Typically, a team will start at 1,500. That's kind of like the standard starting point
Okay,
is
that makes sense. With the number,
1,500.
okay, with the numbers that are here, that makes sense. Okay, so everybody keep in mind that these numbers are basically you're starting from a starting point of 1,500, and then you're going up or down an X amount of points per game is essentially what's going on.
Yes, and it
So think
compounds
of
over the course of the season.
right. Okay, that makes perfect sense that 1,500 is the number, and you'll see why when I start listing off these numbers. So think of 1,500 as your midline, your average team, and then we'll go from there. So I want to start off by talking about everybody's raw elo strength. So we're not going to talk about divisions or anything or adding in strength to schedule. We're just talking about everybody's raw elo right now. So first in the league is the Rebels at 1774. And again, this is based off of how many goals they're winning by, who they've beaten, and so forth. Okay, so Rebels, number one, 1774. Then second are the Shamrocks, 718. Third are the Mavericks, 1681. The Blizzard are 1654 at fourth. The Chill are fifth, 1647. The Kings, 1638, are sixth. The Silver Tips are seventh, 1565. And the Mountaineers are eighth at 1543. So those teams would all be considered above or slightly above average. Those are your top 8 teams. And then ninth is the Crude at 1408. So they're below that midline of 1500. The Marauders are 10th at 1374. The Rampage are 11th at 1359. The Outlaws are 12th at 1336. The SWAT are 13th at 1180. And then at the last place, 14th, are the Warriors at 1122. So those are your raw scores. So I found it interesting that the Rebels are number one within that ranking, the Shamrocks 2, and the Mavericks 3. Those are your top 3. And then now another interesting thing about this is if you look at each division's ELO strength, just this is based off of how teams are doing outside of their division. The South are actually first ahead of the Central at 1588. The Central right behind at 1555. And then a big drop off, 100 points basically, the East at 1456. And then bringing up the rear is the North at 1401. So they're about 50 points, 55 points underneath the East.
And that one's kind of an interesting thing to me is, we talked about all season how the Central is the strongest division and super hard to play in that division, and then seeing the ELO rankings of crossover divisional play that ranks the South above the Central. It's just interesting, but it's interesting how tight those two divisions are as well. And I feel like this also kind of falls similarly to how we've talked over the season of how strong these teams are and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not shocked at all. The North is fourth out of the 4 divisions. I was surprised that the South are first above the Central, but I mean, part of that is you have the Shamrocks who have beaten up on the SWAT 3 times and the Warriors one. So you have to understand that there's a lot of things that sway these things. But it still was a little surprising to see the South up atop and just ahead of the Central.
And you
Now,
saying that too,
go ahead. Yeah.
You saying that too, if you were to look at this ELO ranking in any other season, this is going to change wildly even within the divisions from season to season, right? I'm sure this will become a staple of the Junior Beast moving forward, is having, these ELO rankings of how teams are playing against each other, stuff like that. So I'm sure you come back to this episode in 2-3 years time when we're still talking about Elo, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot different numbers and a different ranking by far.
Yeah, no, this is really cool, actually. Like, I really appreciate the people who sent this over. Good work by you guys. You guys deserve a lot of credit. Now, last thing I want to talk about with these is they also have a division adjusted ELO team strength. So this is again how well you're doing, and it's putting a focus on how you're doing outside your division against other teams. And then also, how the strength of your own division, and who you've played. So Shamrocks are first in this subset, 1670. Rebels are second, 1634. Well, tied for second. The Mavericks have 1634 as well. The Chill are fourth, 1613. So they're right behind those two. The Blizzard come in at fifth at 1580. The Kings 1570 or sixth. The Silvertips seventh 1561. Mountaineers 1560. So they're color coded. So those teams, so the top four are all in red, and then the next four are in orange. And I think that signifies they're above average because they're above that 1500 midline. Then you have the yellow group, Marauders 1454, and the Rampage starting to go green from yellow to green 1432. Crude are in green, a light green at 1405. Outlaws are pure green at 1360. SWAT are light blue at 1284, and then the Warriors are blue at 1227. So what I take from that is the top four are all really close. The Shamrocks, the Rebels, the Mavericks, and the Chill. Your top team is 1670, and then your next two are 1634. Chill are 1613, and then you got the next group, and then a couple of groups below that. But again, the South adjusted ELO helping the Shamrocks, and they sit atop there. You have any big takeaways from that, Keenan?
Not really. I do think, however, that this ELO system, I mean, some people I know think it's kind of dumb and all that, and it really solidifies, especially when teams are beating up on, like a good team is beating up on a not so great team, right? Like, it's obviously going to favor that beat up by quite a bit, but it's one of the most fair systems that's out there. It tries to take into account the difficulty of play and all that, right? So I just appreciate the people who put this together and are constantly updating it week to week for us. It's greatly appreciated. I hope this sees the light of day in other ways, because it's just super cool. Which it's interesting how the division adjusted strength goes, because I think that runs pretty well right into the power rankings for week number 8.
Yeah, absolutely. You want me to start it off, or you want to give everybody? I'll go first, maybe, or
Yeah,
what do you? What do you think?
give her.
All right. Okay. So at number 5, I have the Queen City Kings. They were pretty consistently in 6th in those ELO rankings. But for now, I can't. The Blizzard are probably the next team in, but I can't put a team that got whitewashed by the Kings, even though it was early in the season, 2 games in a row. So the Kings are going to stay in the top 5. They're going to slide down to 5th. I believe I had them 4th last week, or maybe no. Actually, I think I had them 5th. So they'll stay in 5th. At number 4, I have the Mountain View Mavericks sliding down. I'm very concerned about how they're continually getting down in games by 5 or 6 goals and relying on these miraculous comebacks. They got down like 8-2 to the Blizzard last week. They got down way down to the Outlaws and scored a bunch of goals late in that game and won in overtime. They got down 6-0 right away to the Rebels, weren't able to overcome that. And there's been a couple other games where they've gotten down, and so I have concerns there. They're obviously up near the top of the league. For now, I'm going to put them in 4th. At 3rd, I've got the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels. I've I wish I didn't see some of the games they've played this year because that really does set some concerns off for me. The good news for them is that they're getting some big time guys. Really, two guys I think are probably their two best players back in Reed Lowe from A and Nolan Eastwood, who I think is really an incredible player. I think he's one of the best in the league, and I think he's a guy that does so many little things for you, and he's one of the best guys at creating turnovers and creating havoc on the floor. He'll press and he'll get possession back for you. He's great on loose balls, and he can obviously score and feed the ball as well. He can do a bit of everything. Like I said, we'll run back on defense when needed, and it can be dangerous in transition too. So those are big gets. They might be adding more. I would expect them to add more coming up here. So they'll be at 3. It's a really hard decision for me whether to put them at 2 or 3. I'm gonna put the Chill at 2. I just think that there's a lot of teams in this league that lack an identity and lack real strengths. The Chill do have one. It's their offense. I think it is the best in the league. I'll go on record as saying that. I hope that Tack and Brett Barron there prove me right here with this team, but I do have belief in them, and I think they're really dangerous. They showed that the past few games, and they need their starting goalie back in Madsen. That's going to make a big difference. I'll put them at 2 here, just ahead, just barely ahead of the Rebels. And then at number 1, I've got the Calgary Shamrocks, a team that year in and year out is a top of the league as a contender. Just that consistency and efficiency. Right now, I know they went into a place that nobody wins in and lost. And they have a pretty well balanced team now. I think getting Mystic down from A is going to make a huge difference for them in net. And they're another team I think is going to add and get better down the stretch. So I'll go with them at number 1. Now, I want to make one thing clear to everybody. When you do power rankings, the whole idea is to look at it and go, okay, if these two teams played on a neutral floor, not in Mountain View, not in Fort Saskatchewan, not in wherever, if they played on a neutral field, let's say in freaking Westlock, Alberta, a neutral floor in Westlock, Alberta, who would you take in a best of 7, a best of 5? Okay, then that's what I'm putting. That's what that's what you're basing it off of. So you have to keep that in perspective. This isn't about records. This isn't about, who's sitting in first place in their division. So, I don't hate your team. I know I get that sometimes. I really, it doesn't make a difference in my life who wins. I just want to see good lacrosse. So that's what I'm going with this week. Kings 5, Mavericks 4, Rebels 3, Chill 2, Shamrocks 1. Keenan, what do you got?
We have the same teams in our top 5, but a bit of a slightly different order on my side. Down at number 5, I do have the Kings, same as you. Basically the same reasons, I mean, the Kings are being the Kings. It's ridiculous when you look at their schedule, and they've only lost a single game so far all year. And 9 of their last 10 games here road games, so it's going to be interesting. And that's the only reason that I think I have the Kings this low, is I'm curious to see, and we'll get to the Week 9 preview here shortly, is the Kings play, realistically, their first 3 games on the road all season coming up this weekend against the Outlaws, the Marauders, and the Shamrocks. So I'm curious to see how they do on the road, because at home they're unstoppable, it seems. Up at number 4, this one might surprise you a bit. At number 4, I have the Shamrocks. The only reason that I have the Shamrocks this low is because sitting just above them is the team that beat them on Sunday, is the Mavericks. The Shamrocks, I only have them this low because I think this is kind of the play that we expect for the Shamrocks. But this year it seems like they're playing a lot of tighter games than they normally do. I feel like last year we saw a lot more blowouts by the Shamrocks. The Shamrocks, they're just playing good lacrosse, period. I I don't think it's exceptional lacrosse, which might irk a few feathers of some people, me saying that. But it's damn good lacrosse, period. The Mavericks I do have above them. They slipped down a bit. So the Mavericks number 3. I think that game against the Rebels really was a disappointment. As I said earlier in this pod, they didn't play the way they normally do. They felt a little bit slower and all that, and not making the same plays that they're generally known for. It concerns me a bit, like you said, that the Mavericks are going down by so much against these teams. Sure, they're finding ways to win, but at what point does that start to bite you in the ass? And I'm scared that it might start to bite the Mavericks soon, as much as, we hope it doesn't. So, Mavericks at number 3. At number 2, I have the Calgary Chill. I mean, they're heating up at the right time, man. Like, 39 goals in 2 games, like we said. This is the time that they're starting to heat up. And it's a good thing for them. I think this brings the fight to the tips in the Mavericks, and I'm so excited to see how that division shapes up in these final 3 weeks of, or I guess technically 4 weeks of the season. And sitting at number 1, I do have the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels sitting atop everybody else. They're on a solid win streak right now of 6 games after coming back off of the... What? What?
No, I mean, no. Yeah, you make me laugh, man. You go from you went from Rebels at 2 weeks ago to Rebels out of the rankings last week to Rebels in the number 1 spot this week. There you go, folks. Known Rebel hater, Keenen putting Rebels in the first spot.
Oh my god. You know what? Maybe last week was a bit of an outlier, okay? Maybe don't trust my stats from last week, because I have the Rebels at the top, 6-game win streak coming off of those 3 losses out in Winnipeg. So, just to recap, Kings 5, Shamrocks 4, Mavericks 3, Chill 2, Rebels number 1.
There you go. Nobody can ever say Keenen hates the Rebels again. Period.
Look,
end of story.
People have been
shut the book.
People have been crapping on me all day yesterday, man, for that tweet I made about the Oilers and needing to move out some players. So it only seems right.
Why don't you text like 1260 or like EST or something like that and say that you need a job, because you had like 630 likes and. That tweet went viral. You showed me that, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" Like, everybody on Twitter saw that
pissed
tweet.
Everybody off.
Yeah. Maybe you can put out a tweet about the Rebels, and you can get them a bunch of attention.
You know what? Maybe I should about my power rankings. And then you know what? I've gotten enough shit talk from the hockey community over the last 24 hours. I guess I could use some from the lacrosse too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You made all the Rebels happy now. They're all celebrating. Maybe they'll take you out. Maybe they'll take you to Chuck E. Cheese and celebrate.
You know what, brother? Don't crap talk Chuck E. Cheese. It's been a hot minute since I've been there, and let's be real. The rec room is basically just adult Chuck E. Cheese, but we're getting off topic now.
Yeah.
Let's move into the Week 9 preview. A big slate of games this weekend, as there's going to be 12 broadcasts this weekend on CROW. 3 games on your Friday. It's going to be the Warriors at the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels, 7 p.m. start time. Then a pair of games that start at 7:30. It's going to be a Junior B Tier 1 matchup as the Queen City Kings roll into Alberta for, well, I guess their second, third, and fourth games of the road games of the season. However, I mean, the first one's outside of Saskatchewan on the road. So Queen City Kings taking on the Beaumont Outlaws at 7:30 on Friday. Same time, it's going to be the St. Albert Drillers taking on the Capital Region Saints. Saturday, 5 games for you, as the Sylvan Lake Yeti are going to come up the QE2 to take on the Sherwood Park Titans in a Junior B Tier 2 matchup. That game in the afternoon at 2:30 before a slate of 4 evening games on Saturday, all kicking off with a pair of games at 7 p.m. as the Senior Outlaws take on the Senior Rebels at 7 p.m. and the Mavericks taking on the Silvertips in that Central Division matchup, also at 7. Half an hour later, 7:30, Calgary Chill coming up the QE2 themselves to take on the Beaumont Outlaws. And at 8 p.m., the Winnipeg Blizzard also making the trek out west this weekend to take on the Edmonton Warriors. On Sunday, 4 more games for you, as the Winnipeg Blizzard are going to take on the St. Albert Crude in an 11 a.m. matchup on Sunday. That's, what is that, 15 hours between games? Game start times for the Blizzard? That's brutal, man. And then, so that's going to be your Sunday morning. Then your Sunday afternoon, you got the Calgary Chill taking on the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels, as that's going to be another game like 15 hours later for the Chill, as they play their second back of the back-to-back. 2:30 p.m., the Red Deer Renegades are going to take on the Sherwood Park Titans. Once again, 2:30 p.m., that game in Ardrossan. And to close out the weekend, back-to-back games where the Beaumont Outlaws are visiting the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels on back-to-back days, too. That's such a weird scheduling thing for me, as the Senior Outlaws take on the Senior Rebels at 5 p.m. on Sunday.
That is a scheduling oddity. I don't know what that's about. Like, they did that with the Outlaws and the Miners in Senior B at the start of the season, where the Outlaws played at the Miners twice, bang, bang, and that was it for their season series on the road against the Miners. So I don't know when that became a thing, but
I don't know, but yeah. I'll tell you what, it took me probably about 4 times of double checking everything on the schedule. Like, do I have that right? They play at the Rebels 2 days in a row, but yeah, that is your Week 9 game preview on CROW.
I'll avoid getting on the scheduling tangent, but sitting here at 12:26 a.m., Keenan, I have two requests of people. Go out to these games. Like, let's start getting better crowds at some of these arenas. I look around sometimes and I'm just like don't, like, these kids, I know they have families. I know they have like friends that would be willing to come out. Like, I know as playoffs approach, like, let's get some of these crowds a little bit better. Let's get some energy and some atmosphere in the barns. And my second request is, I forgot to mention this last week. Hit the thumbs up. Obviously, it helps get these podcasts and these games out to more people, so more people can enjoy it and watch it and understand how much of a gift this sport is and how good some of these players are, and just get more eyes on what is quality lacrosse here as we go along through the summer. As always, you can hit me up, m.joma, on Instagram and on Twitter, mj_9. It's been a pleasure talking with everybody this week. As the playoff races heat up, it's only going to get better, and let's fill the stands and get it fired up here as we approach playoff time.
Well, once again, thank you for tuning into the Junior Beast. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and hit that notification bell to be notified every single time we go live all season long. Junior B Tier 1, Junior B Tier 2, Alberta Major Female, and Senior B, as well as you'll be notified every time a new Junior Beast podcast drops. All season long, still another, 3 more regular season episodes, plus then all of the playoffs coverage and Larry Bishop coverage. So, still a lot coming. Also, I already know for a fact we're already planning on some big things for the Larry Bishop, including some live Junior Beast podcasts. So keep your eyes and ears out for that, because those are going to be fun, and can't wait to, do these live. It's always fun recording it with you, Muhammad, but, I love talking to the fans and chatting lacrosse with people. So for my co-host, Muhammad, my name is Keenan. Thank you so much for tuning into the Junior Beast, and we'll see you next week.